we did not have a chance to talk with Bob Holt last week because as the baseball season for Arkansas came to an end, Bob took the opportunity to take a well-deserved vacation, and is back on the beat and back on halftime with us today. Bob, how was the trip last week?
It was nice. It was the first time I've been out of town since the 2020 SEC tournament, basketball tournament. I got to see some family, and it was nice just to relax a little bit. But, nothing earth-shattering. I mean, I didn't go to Hawaii or anything, but it was a nice time.
Yeah, nobody would ever confuse Missouri with Hawaii. But I think I saw a photo that you had sent out from the Negro League Museum and Hall of Fame in Kansas City, which is, I'm not going to put it on the level of Hawaii, but it's one of the coolest places for a sports fan to visit.
Yeah, I went to the museum years ago, and I know they've upgraded in terms of space. And I think I must have been to the one before they got a bigger space because it was, it's not Cooperstown, but it's a very nice museum, a lot of good artifacts there. And if you like jazz music or have an interest in the history of jazz, they're literally in the same building. You can get a combo ticket that's not super expensive. I think the lady gave me the senior discount. I don't know if I actually qualify. I'm old. I'm not quite that old, baby, but I got a combo ticket for $13, which I thought was pretty reasonable.
Hey, Bob, you heard the laugh here of our new co-host on Halftime. That's Drew Barrett, who he's from Memphis, worked in Memphis sports radio for the last 7 years, and we've been trying to introduce a few things about what it's like to be a Razorback fan. Now, I mean, you're not from Arkansas, but you've been on the Razorback beat now since the early 1980s. How long did it feel for you before you felt like you had an understanding about the people that you were writing for?
Oh, it probably took a good year. I tried to do a lot of research when I got hired. I think they may still have these in libraries, but I was in Little Rock for a couple of weeks at the working out of the Democrat-Gazette office down there, and they had these big stacks of bound copies of the paper. The Democrat, back then it was here, it's a Democrat and the Gazette, and I just poured over those and read as much as I could about Arkansas and kind of got a feel for how they were covered, how the Razorbacks were covered. Like, okay, if the third-string quarterback has a sprained ankle, that's a story. A lot of cases, that's not a story. But the Razorbacks are like, the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. I guess not the NHL, although I think there's a club hockey team. But yeah, it made me realize. I think I knew when I took the job what a big deal the Razorbacks were in Arkansas, and of course I'd covered Nebraska some with the Big 8 being from Missouri, but that really made me realize what a big deal Arkansas was, and that's stayed true through all the years, obviously.
Yeah, but I'm slowly learning, slowly absorbing, and before we get into our actual conversation about everything Arkansas, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up that apparently we have a friend in common and somebody I hold a lot of respect to, and I'm sure you do. Chuck Galena told me that you two knew each other.
Oh, yeah, Chuck's the best. I got to know Chuck when he was the Auburn basketball SID, and he's a great guy, and he's a big Cardinals fan, I know. And, he still has Cardinal season tickets. I know he left Auburn and went to Memphis, back to Memphis, which is hometown. Yeah, Chuck's one of the best guys in the business I've ever been around. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to see him in quite a while. I'd have to think about the last time. But, yeah, one of the great things about, whenever Auburn would come to town is Chuck would take a group of guys to Herman's, and he was, well, not always, but if I could make it, he was usually nice enough to include me in that group too. So that was always a very nice thing. But even without Herman, I think the world of Chuck.
Oh yeah, he's technically my boss at the University of Memphis. As he was the interim head of communications in the athletic department. Great guy to work with, and just an all-around great person. But Dave Van Horn obviously had his kind of postseason exit interview. What was the main thing that stuck out to you as far as the team moving forward that Dave Van Horn said yesterday?
Well, I guess the biggest news to me was he mentioned that Peyton Paulette, who's a very talented pitcher, and we kind of assumed he was going to need Tommy John surgery. In the Florida series, he came off the mound, looked like a pretty serious elbow injury. And Dave said yesterday that they haven't, it sounds like they've had pretty extensive testing and with some medical places that specialize in this, and that they haven't been able to find a tear in his elbow, which is great news. Now, Dave didn't totally rule out that there isn't a tear in there, but it sounds like they've looked pretty long and hard for a tear, and they haven't been able to find one. That's great news. So, assuming he's pain-free, he could start pitching again here probably in a few weeks and be ready for fall ball and be ready for the season. So that to me was the number one thing, that Peyton Paulette's injury hopefully is not as serious as we first thought, and that he'd be ready to go for next season from the start.
That's great. I was excited about hearing that too, because I was really nervous about Peyton. Did you have a sense from Dave that the way that this last season ended might stay with him a little bit? Because I think he said all the right things, and I believe him about looking at this season as a success. Because it was. You win an SEC championship, you win a tournament championship, you don't have a losing week in the regular season, you have the top player in the country. There's always that if at the end, and 20 years from now, we'll all remember that part of this great season too. You just can't get past that. Did you have that sense from Dave too?
Well, Dave's been doing this a long time. He's been to Omaha, excuse me, I think it's 8 times, right? I think he leads all active coaches. And he's going to do this a while longer. You asked him about that, and I'd have to look it up. I think Dave's 60 or 61, but he obviously takes good care of himself. And I could see him coaching another 10 years. I don't know if he wants to do that long, but, think about this. I know obviously a lot of people are disappointed they didn't get to Omaha. That's the ultimate goal, but you think about it, every year there's usually 2, 3, 4 top 8 seeds that don't make it. It's just, the law of averages, just like in basketball. A lot of number 1 seeds don't get to the Final Four to the Elite 8 or whatever. There's been years, I think the fans, what I hope they would do is think back to other years. Like, was it 2015 when Arkansas was the number 3 seed? Not overall, but in the Stillwater Regional. So if you're number 3 seed and you're from a Power 5, at large, that means you probably were one of the last teams in the field. Arkansas was probably rated about 35th or something that year, and they got hot, and Benintendi had an incredible year, and they went to the College World Series as a number 3 seed. And that happens sometimes. I think Fresno State won it all as a 3 seed, and maybe some other teams have done that. But, sometimes it's about getting hot at the right time, like that year when Arkansas went to Omaha totally unexpectedly, and sometimes it's about running into the wrong team at the wrong time. And I'd say, NC, people say, what happened to Arkansas? I'd say what happened to them, a lot of what happened to them was NC State, who played very, very well the second half of the season, and they probably deserved to be a 16 or 17 seed or, whatever. I guess they were a 17 seed, technically, if they went to play a 16 seed in La Tech, but they're playing like a top 5 seed right now. They might win it all. We'll see what happens. They're going to have to play Vanderbilt again, I guess, on Friday. But, I think people have to understand, Dave, a lot of times he's that line, it's baseball. And, there are years that, on paper, you should get to Omaha and you don't. And there are years where you don't expect it and you do. And, people have to enjoy kind of the ebb and flow of it all. But, this is Arkansas put together really one of the great seasons, regular season in college baseball history. I'd say winning the SEC regular season and winning the tournament, that's just really, really tough to do.
Yeah, the outcome wasn't what you expected or really wanted, but the ride was so much fun that I think as fans and Dave Van Horn and his team really get some time to reflect on the year, I think that it'll be just full of great memories and not so much of a bad taste in their mouth. But obviously Kevin Kopps had one of the, if not the best season in college baseball history, and what he was able to do from the mound. To get the same type of productivity that Kopps gave you, how many different guys is it going to take to give you somewhat of a resemblance of what Kopps brought?
That's a great question. You just think about, how he was able to throw, multiple innings and multiple games on weekends. I think he threw 4+ innings, like, I don't know, close to 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the year, he threw 8 innings after throwing 2 innings the day before, which is that's really unheard of. And so, you know, he basically, every weekend he did the work of a couple quality relievers. He was almost like a bullpen unto himself, you know.
Yeah.
And then when he needed him to start, I know it didn't, you know, the final wasn't what Arkansas wanted, but when they needed a quality start from him at the end of the year, he did that too. And, you know, he could start games. You know, if he'd been a starter this year, he probably would have been an All-American. But, you know, if you're starting, you're not going to be able to throw in other games. You know, he did that. He threw, you know, 10 innings, I guess, combined against NC State. But, you know, most weekends, I think they used him the right way because he could help them get 2, even 3 wins some weekends. And that's just, I mean, I just can't think of another guy who ever did that. I was just looking at the stats. He threw like 80-something innings, you know, which is just unbelievable. And, you know, there aren't many pitchers in the country that threw that many innings this year, even guys in Omaha. And so, yeah, I think, you know, you probably need about 3 guys to replace him. A couple good, you know, good relievers that you can run on the weekend. So, I mean, basically he's irreplaceable. You just have to do the best you can. Just appreciate what he did.
Would it be accurate to end this conversation here by saying that Kevin Kopps was to Arkansas, maybe even more so to Arkansas, what Willie Hernandez was to the 1984 Detroit Tigers? Like a relief pitcher that came out of nowhere to win an MVP award. That's what Willie Hernandez did in '84. It's kind of what Kevin did this year, too.
Yeah, I think Hernandez had 47 saves that year. And he'd been a good reliever. He'd been with the Phillies. I can't remember who he traded for him, but it was a heck of a trade. Kind of the John Smoltz trade in reverse. But, yeah, he just had an unbelievable year, not just the Cy Young winner, the MVP winner. And but I'd have to say, you know, being obviously it's apples and oranges, talking about 162-game schedule. But, yeah, I think Kevin Kopps is every bit as important to the Razorbacks as Willie Hernandez was. And honestly, when you look at you're talking about 64 games Arkansas played, I have to say Kopps probably did more for the Razorbacks than Hernandez did for the Tigers even.
It's amazing when you think about it. All right, Bob, we'll let you go, man. Appreciate you. It's good to get back with you, and looking forward to whatever we can figure out talking about this summer, which eventually we'll be pointing towards football.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, you guys take care.
Thanks, Bob.
You got it. Bob Holt, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Drew, one thing you got to know about Bob is that during SEC Media Days, usually the first question of each press conference is reserved for him. It's amazing. Also, what is amazing, Phil floats. Nothing says summer fun like fishing with a Phil bobber with the family. America's favorite floats by Phil are available in a variety of sizes and colors. They're made from premium balsa wood and made by the thousands at Pradco in Fort Smith. These are great at detecting the slightest bites by fish and work great in tandem with crickets and red worms. Phil floats. They're available at Walmart, Bass Pro Shops, Academy, LearNet.com, and tackle shops everywhere. America's favorite floats by Phil.